Allô les meufs et les mecs. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is mental health. And the conversation on mental health, I want to talk about inner conflict. And I want to talk about inner conflict because it can be something that can really eat us up inside if we make a decision. And now we've been given new information, or even as we're making the decision, we have a lot of inner conflict about it. And so I want to talk about the things that I have learned regarding inner conflict and how to manage it and how to still stay in alignment and honor the choices that you yourself make. Because ultimately, we're only ever making choices with the information that we have available to us. And if we are people who have been taught to think critically, if we have that lens, then we have to trust that we're using the information that we're supposed to make the right decisions for us, for the people that we care about. But again, there's always to be a risk that you don't have all of the information. And sometimes after you make the decision, that's when certain information comes up that can make it either so that you would pivot and make a different decision, or you have to maintain the course because the decision that you made doesn't give you an exit strategy. And so because of that, there are certain decisions that can be very heavy and that can create a lot of inner conflict. Because I want to talk a little bit about this within the realm of mental health, because one of the big decisions that I had made 5 years ago is to go no contact. And I think that when we think about the types of decisions that we make when it comes to the relationships that we have, the ones that we choose to keep, the ones that we decide to let go, that's where there can be a lot of inner conflict, because no one is ever all bad, right? So even if you have someone in mind, someone who can be toxic, who can be really bad for you, I'm sure there's a highlight reel in your head of the reasons why maybe you don't want to make such an extreme or drastic choice. But it's never the good. It's always how bad do things get? How bad can things get? And you only have the information that you have available to you now to make the right call. And so when I think about the call that I made 5 years ago to no contact, and it was a decision that was in the making my whole life, essentially, right? And for anyone who has survived narcissistic abuse or who has been raised in narcissistic family systems, it is a choice that you're entertaining your whole life. And sometimes you get stuck and you're so entangled in those relationships that you never get out of it, but you know that it's a question of getting out because there's a lot of manipulation, dominance, and control that's involved that you're really trying to break free from. But if you do make the choice to get out, you know, because you know the people that you're interacting with, that it's not a choice that you can waver on. Like when you do decide that this is the moment that you're going to go no contact, especially depending on the level of severity that that decision is going to create, because you know the people you're dealing with. Like for me, like I understood, and I think even that my family members understood, because I had told them, like, I am not someone who wavers. I am not someone who makes empty threats. The day that I say I no longer want you in my life, like it's going to be the day that you will absolutely no longer have access to my life. And so because everyone knew that about me, that I was never the kind of person who just say things just to kind of get a reaction or see things because it felt good emotionally, like I was very much the kind of person where unless I feel like this is what I'm going to do, and this is this is the course I'm going to take, like I'm just not going to speak that way. And so when the day came where I decided to go no contact, it was a lot of fireworks. It was a really intense, very extreme, and very dangerous situation for me. And I knew that there was going to be backlash. I didn't know to what extent. Nothing could have prepared me for all of the events that took place. Like I had to involve law enforcement. I got legal support as well because of the extremity of the reaction. And the extremity of the reaction was twofold. One of it was because of the things that I was experiencing, that maintaining a relationship kept that person feeling protected, in that I wouldn't disclose that information of the abuse that I was experiencing at their hands. It's important also because my mother works in the mental health industry. She has a doctorate degree. She is someone who was highly respected in her industry. So if people knew that behind closed doors she was as abusive as what she was, then it was going to discredit her. It was going to definitely be a big impact on her professionally. Despite her having a doctorate degree, despite her working in administration at the university, like all of that was the facade, was like the public facing face. But behind the scenes, there's just a lot of abusive behavior going on. And as I became more decorated, as I got my degrees and my MBA, as I started to travel and work abroad, there was a lot of friction between her and I, because now she felt she was in direct competition with me. And that was never the case. And we picked completely different streams, right? Like, so though right now I'm in the wellness space having a conversation with you, like I definitely picked the traditional business stream. I taught in traditional MBA, and I'm very much focused on building these programs because I spent 7 years in training and development, building training programs from scratch, leveraging like insights that I learned from my degrees from cognitive neuroscience, as well as professional writing, to put together very quality, high impact training segments. And so because I have facilitated soft skill training, corporate training, leadership training in multinational companies around the world, of course I'm going to feel like I have the wherewithal to build a training program that keeps in mind development psychology and memory system principles. And that's how I really got into the market of training and development, because with my background in cognitive neurosciences, if any of you do any research, the cognitive neuroscience degree is multidisciplinary. So there's elements of psychology, of philosophy, there are elements of AI, of robotics. Like I took a mix, but my areas of special interest was developmental psychology and memory systems. So I was very much interested in memory systems, how that translated by way of linguistics. It was a big interest of mine. And then coupled that with some philosophical principles like logical positivism is really a strong foundation to build a training program that's not just interesting, but that actually sticks. You walk away retaining something different. In any case, like I felt really confident that I could build a platform. I could build training sessions, not just for the corporate consumer, not just as I'm getting paid to do it, because at this point, my career was evolving beyond training and development, beyond talent management. And I was getting into project management, which is my niche in my professional sphere. But because this is not a competency I want to lose, I decided to build these training programs as part of my business, personal passion, my social entrepreneurship, which is Project Purpose. And as I got closer to that initiative, as I got closer to that, and as I became my own person and really started to step into my own individuality, that created a lot of friction with my family, more specifically with my mother, who had always been competing with me since I was even in high school. Like even in high school, if I dyed my hair, she would copy it. If I wore specific clothing, she would copy it. She would want me to take her out to parties and things like that. So there was a lot of just jealousy and envy that I had dealt with. And I knew that the day that I decided to go no contact, it was going to be a big deal. And I needed to safeguard myself as much as possible, because there was absolutely going to be backlash. She was absolutely not going to go down without a fight, because she didn't understand that my being her daughter didn't mean that I was her property. For me, I was very much her property. I very much was supposed to do what she said when she said it, at whatever time and place. And as I became more aware that that wasn't true, like that created a lot of dissension in my family dynamics. And so I knew that, especially after I had moved to France, when I had come back, it was even worse. Like at that point, there's no love lost between us, right? Like I came back from France and it was a very toxic situation. Like the envy would be touch and go growing up. And at that point, it was just rampant and it was really, really unhealthy. And it started escalating because of the COVID situation. And I was trapped in the house. I was doing recruitment pipelines. All of the recruitment pipelines were trapped. I'd just gotten back from France and it was creating a perfect storm. And as I realized that this storm was really getting into a version of reality that I couldn't recognize, but I understood was going to lead down a path that wasn't great for me. Like I understood that if I didn't get out of this situation, this toxic, abusive, very hostile situation, that something bad was going to happen to me specifically, then I decided to just get myself an exit strategy. And so with my exit strategy, it involved law enforcement, it involved legal support as well, because I knew that there was going to be backlash. I understood, so that she understood that the day that I showed up ready to leave, that she was never going to see me again. And then that was going to create a really big reaction, a lot of big ripples. And so it did definitely create a lot of big ripples. There was a lot of character assassination. And again, my mother works in the mental health industry. The character assassination, especially attacking me as an individual, is because she was trying to protect her own career, because in her career, like she couldn't be an abusive person and be allowed, I think, to act as she was at that point in time in her career. I know that she had a lot of backlash because, again, I got a lot of support. But then there's moments where, because when I decided to go no contact, I decided to go no contact with everyone. So anyone who had a relationship with her, I could not have a relationship with. Family, friends, it didn't matter. Like anyone who had a dotted line or a direct line to my mother, I also decided to cut off and go no contact with. And that was a difficult choice. And there are sometimes, and with her, with my mother, there's no conflict around that choice. I'm very happy that I made that choice. It was the right choice for me. And it became even more clear that it was the right choice for me because of how violent and how aggressive going no contact was, and just the level of and the level of hatred I think that I felt in her reaction to me going no contact, the sequence of events that she herself was involved in or engaged in, the sequence of behaviors that I had dealt with that led to me deciding to go to no contact. And it wasn't the ideal situation. Again, it was COVID. I had just moved back from France. I was only recruiting. I hadn't gotten myself a full-time job yet. So me going no contact was like me assuming a lot of responsibility with a lot of unknown variables, but it would have had to be a very extreme situation for me to make that choice and recognize that that was still a better choice than trying to stick it out in the hostile environment that I was in, staying at my mother's house after coming back from France. And so all of that said, when it comes to making really difficult choices around other relationships, like going no contact and cutting everyone off, it was really to safeguard myself. And there are moments where you think to yourself, well, wait, did I make the wrong choice? Like in going no contact, it meant that, I had relatives and family members who were much older, like my grandmother or my great grandmother who passed away. And it was not even communicated to me that they had passed on until well after the fact. And it's like, these are the people that I grew up with. Like this was my family, but going no contact meant that that was going to be something that I was going to permanently opt out of. There was not going to be a situation that I would allow myself to step into where I was going to be in the same room with my mother who had subjected me to significant abuse and mistreatment. And so I think now, like, I've moved on. My life here in Portugal is very beautiful. I am back on track by way of my career with Project Purpose. I mean, that is something that I've put sort of behind me. But then there are these moments where this inner conflict does come up when you hear about different things that are happening with your extended family that you yourself will know, you're never going to participate in. So you recognize that maybe it's better to just not know, and that, to make sure that every way that someone could try to get in touch with you, like you really do try to, and I do definitely make an effort to make myself as difficult to reach for the people who I knew, who knew that there was this abuse and mistreatment going on and who were silent. So that was sort of their passive role that they played in that situation, and also why I felt further justified in going no contact with all of those family members. But with new information always comes a certain degree of, okay, well, was I too extreme? Was I in cutting everyone else off? Like, was I too extreme in the way that I manage things? And I think that it makes sense that when you make such big life choices with so many ripples, that you have these moments where you're like, well, wait, did I jump the gun? Like, was I too severe? But I think it's easy for me to make those types of criticisms in hindsight because there's a lot of details that, like, sometimes time will have you blot out. And so I think that when it is a case that you are having inner conflict, like, give yourself a moment of silence to think about all of the events that aren't going to be top of mind, especially with years that have taken place between when you made that decision and now, so that you remember, like, why you made that tough call. And so you can honor that choice no matter how many years go by. And so the only way that I would make a decision to pivot from that choice is if there was misinformation. There was something that if there was something that I didn't know, or there's something that I misunderstood. And if those two things aren't the case, if there was not something that you didn't know, if there was not something that you misunderstood and you made that choice, then that inner conflict is just emotionality that I would sit with, I would hold space for, I would respect it, and then I would let it go because I know that I made the choice to honor myself and to maintain a certain degree of alignment. And alignment for me is everything. Alignment over everything is how I've made it this far with all of the hurdles and challenges and hardships that life has handed me since 2020. And so when I think about inner conflict, I think about how it's given me the opportunity to really sit with myself, to go inward, and to remind myself, reassure myself that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, going through exactly the things that I'm supposed to do. And I'm very proud of all the decisions that I've made to get here. And so I wanted to have that little conversation around inner conflict, especially when it comes to dealing with going no contact when you're dealing with narcissistic family systems. And I hope that it's something that gives you fuel, because I know that we're approaching 2026, a new year, and a lot of the times New Year's resolutions does involve the decisions they make around the people that we want to keep or leave behind in 2025. And if you're someone who has survived narcissistic abuse, then it's often the time where I would think to myself, like, am I ready to go no contact with my family? It would be a conversation that I would have with myself year over year, especially around this time, because the holidays would have just happened and it would have been an ordeal. There would have been things that had taken place that were equally stressful. And then I would ask the question and I would tell myself, up until that year, I wasn't ready to do it, but I knew that it was something I was going to do. But now that I've done it, there are these moments where I catch wind of like a death in the family, or I catch wind of specific milestones or life events, and it gives me like the sense of, well, wait, did I make too harsh of a choice? Because I really definitely went like no contact across the board. And I remember I sit inward, I hold space for those emotions. And it's a lot of, I guess, missed opportunities with people that I did love, absolutely. And I think there's nothing wrong with loving people, but I chose to love myself more. And in loving myself more, I chose to choose the path of self-respect, of self-regard, and hold people accountable for their treatment and for their silence as well. And I think that when you go no contact, it's not just the people who are actively abusing you, it's a lot of the people who are complicit in that abuse because of their silence, because they don't want to speak up, because they don't want to get involved, or because they would rather not mess up their own dynamic because they themselves don't have issues with those individuals. And so all of that are really good reasons to stay no contact with all of the people that you decided were part of that cycle for you. And it was definitely part of that cycle for me. And so I want to just have this conversation because I think there are going to be moments in everyone's life where you have inner conflict about a choice that you made, about a path that you've taken because of certain information coming up, or because you've maybe misunderstood something, or because now you have new information, or now you're dealing with the consequences of your choices. And that can be really scary. Even if like you have your eyes wide open, we can't always know all of the things that are going to take place as a byproduct of the choice that we made. But I'm so proud of where I am, and I dealt with the consequences of my choices. It was very hard path for the first few years, for sure. But from that, a lot of growth, a lot of self-recognition, self-awareness, lots of healing took place as well. And I'm in a really, really good place. So I don't think we want to diminish that either when we think about healing, especially healing from narcissistic relationships, and seeing how the world continues. Because I think you maintain the path, like you honor your choices, unless you've made the wrong choice, and it's definitively the wrong choice because you got misinformed. I think that if it is just the case that you're having a moment where you're feeling emotional, honor those emotions for sure, but honor your choice even more and maintain that sense of alignment. In any case, that was what I wanted to talk about today. It was some food for thought for you. Now, if I've piqued your interest, if you want to have more conversations around these themes and these topics that enable you to just cultivate a certain degree of mastery over yourself, mastery over your emotions, mastery over your thoughts, and giving yourself the opportunity to find that inner alignment, then I do invite you to join in on our live events. We do host live events at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future on our website. So definitely be sure to check those out. And now, as I had mentioned earlier, I do put programs together to support leadership development. And because of my background in cognitive neuroscience, with a special focus on memory systems and developmental psychology, I did put together programs for children, teaching children how to lead at a very young age. And so our proof of concept really believes that leadership quotient is built in 4 core competencies, and that's cultivating a sense of autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept. So those are the programs that we have built and packaged for you. So definitely check those programs out. Leave us a comment down below if there is inner conflict that you are experiencing because of a difficult choice that you made, but you're choosing the path of honoring yourself, honoring your choices, and maintaining that sense of alignment. And we'll talk to you all very soon.